Welcome back from the break, everybody. I've got a very special guest today, someone I've known for a few years now and written about, and he's one of the stars of the renewable energy field. And I'd like to introduce Lyndon Rive. Lyndon, come on out. Lyndon, before we get into the nitty-gritty, I understand that you just came back from your underwater hockey tournament. And could you tell us how it went? And maybe you could even tell us what is underwater hockey.
Yeah, so just came back from the Pacific Coast Championships in Hawaii. There were 10 teams competing. We came fifth, so it wasn't a great tournament. Competed against Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. But yeah, you play the mask fins, go down, hold your breath, play as long as you can. Puck's made of lead at the bottom of the pool. Before you run out of air, you give the puck to your buddy, go up, get some air. 6 players aside, in the water, 4 subs, so 10 players aside.
And you do it because it's easier than running a solar company?
Actually, I learn a lot in the sport in running a solar company, so I learned how to hold my breath. I learned that you, in the solar industry, that you may think you're going to come up for air. You're not going to come up for air. So there's a lot of things that you can apply to the solar industry, and things like you pushing things in water. So
there we go.
Things a lot of things.
Well, you've had a remarkable journey. I mean, I love the story about how you came up with the idea for SolarCity. You were with your cousin Elon Musk, and you're going to Burning Man, and you're in an RV, and you just, I guess, sold a successful tech company, right? And you said to him, it was like that scene in The Graduate. It's like, what do I do? And he just looked at you, and he said, solar. And that was it. And then now you have a $4 billion market cap, and you're the largest solar installer by far in the country, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So lately, I mean, I know the entire stock market's down and the energy sector in general is down, but the solar companies have been getting hit pretty hard in the last few weeks. What's going on? Why isn't Wall Street in love with solar?
You know, there's a few reasons that I think is the case. Well, if you step back, Wall Street should be in love with it. The fundamentals, everything of it is improving. The industry is growing at 50%. That's the entire industry. SolarCity is growing at a faster rate, historically around 80 to 90. The cost is coming down. So when your competitive cost is going up, traditional sources of energy, retail energy is going up, our cost is coming down, and consumers want the product. You'd think all the fundamentals are working. Every single aspect of the fundamentals are working. But our take on why the stocks are taking a beating, a few reasons. One, oil has come down. People associate solar with energy, oil, and there's no correlation at all. In fact, oil could be free, and it won't have an impact on your cost of electricity, unless you live in Hawaii. But it will almost have zero impact on the cost of electricity. The other is, I think the investment community is realizing that this is a long-term revenue stream, so are these solar companies going to be able to raise capital? So there's a little bit of concern around there. There's been a bit of a bloodbath on the yield curves, and that's rippled over into our stock performance. But I think this is just going to phase out, because if you know that the cost is coming down, you know that the consumer demand is at an industry that's a growth rate of 50% off a big number. The solar industry will ride this out and actually come out
well, part of the problem with Wall Street, I imagine, is that, you know, like a startup, and you're more than a startup now, obviously, but you're investing for the future. And so you're not reporting profits, you're investing everything you're making back into the company. And you told me earlier that basically if you stopped investing today, you'd be profitable.
Absolutely. So yes, when you look at business models like ours, you make a capital investment, and then you get a 20 or 30-year recurring revenue stream on that capital investment. But in terms of your GAAP financials, it looks like you have a big loss. But if you do the NPV, the net present value of that cash flow, the solar company is actually making good profit on those assets. You're looking at 11% returns, which is pretty good.
In this day and age is pretty amazing, right? Yeah. But there's a lot of skepticism too that income stream over 20 years is going to be maintained. The Wall Street's saying, well, there are a lot of unknowns out there, and part of it may be based on customers renewing their leases 20 years down. Will they do that, and will the income streams? So
on that, I can definitely address that. We spent a fair amount of time specifically with the rating agencies, and now the rating agencies have gone through a phase where they had to be super conservative after the mortgage crisis. So to get anything past the rating agency, let me tell you, that's not an easy lift. Now, we've done 4 securitizations, so we've done it 4 times through the rating agencies. And all this gets stress tested. Today, when we sell a product, we sell at roughly 15 to 20% below the cost of retail energy. So the only reason why a customer would default is if they believe that, or if retail energy is at a lower cost than our product. And so if you believe that retail energy is going to drop by 20% when it's gone up with natural gas going down, and retail energy is still going up, then that's a highly unlikely scenario. And even if that were to occur, we still wouldn't have default. You just have to address the pricing with the customers. So you could do reduction and extend. So this idea that customers are going to default and pay more for dirty energy, we're just not seeing it happen. We've got 9 years of experience, and if you take the accumulated default, it's 0.5%. It's better than any asset class ever.
So where are you on pricing right now compared to other forms of electricity, gas, coal, and give us the numbers with subsidies and without subsidies?
Sure. So most of the states that we operate today, there's no state-based subsidies. Most of them. There's still some SREC markets on the East Coast. And when we price off the cost of retail energy. So in California, and our business model is slightly unique. We do fixed pricing. So every customer pays the same. We believe we're selling a commodity. We're going to sell electricity, so we fix the price. Some customers will have lower production, higher production, but they pay the same for the energy. So in California, we sell for 15 cents a kilowatt hour. The retail rate is 20 to 28 cents a kilowatt hour. So we're showing a big savings.
That's with subsidies?
So the retail rate,
the retail rate
is 20. So that's just the current retail rate of energy.
The 15 cents reflects subsidies.
The 15% does reflect the 30% tax credit that's available today. So that's where we are. On the East Coast, we will sell for between 12 and 15 cents, depending on which utility you're in. But the design is to show the customer savings. So for the most part, it's around 15 to 20% savings off their current retail rate of energy.
Okay, so you're competitive. Now, we've talked a lot in this conference about the subsidies, and I don't want to go into it too deeply, but are you optimistic they're going to get renewed? We were talking earlier, there are rumors of this deal going around in Washington that maybe if Congress allows oil exports, then the trade-off would be to renew the solar subsidies. I mean, are you optimistic about that?
Yeah, so my point on the subsidies is you got to do one of two things. You either have to tax those who are polluting or incentivize those who are providing clean energy. So if you can't tax those who are polluting, then incentivize those who are providing clean energy. So you have to do one of those two things. We can't just continue the path that we're on right now and think things are going to be okay.
Right.
We can't do that. What we are planning for our internal business is we are planning that there won't be any extension. That would be a bad outcome in policy, but that's what we are planning for.
Yep.
If there is no extension, it will have an impact on the solar industry. For those who cannot get the cost target down below 250 a watt, it's going to be real tough.
It'll be a shakeout in the industry.
It's going to be real tough.
2017, it'll be a bloodbath.
And it'll be a shame because the country's invested so much into building this amazing industry and growing, doing really well, and providing a clean source of energy, competing against another source of energy that's been highly subsidized for 80 years. The argument I hear is that, when will solar survive without its incentives? Like, that's a really hypocritical stance to take. You have to say, when will all energy survive without incentives? And we know that the other incentives are impossible to remove. Like, you cannot get it out of the system. They are there for in perpetuity. So if you cannot get it out of the system, then continue subsidizing or keeping things at an equal playing field for those who aren't killing us.
Sounds like you need lobbyists as good as the oil industry has.
That's right. We're working on that. but on a serious note, one thing that we do have going for us is consumers are starting to realize this. Consumers are starting to realize that the way energy is produced right now has to change. A transformation is occurring.
Yep.
Like, if we look at some of our states, some of our most hostile states, like if you take Arizona, where we have massive clashes with the utilities and the existing fossil fuel industry. In that state, where everybody says solar is going to die, we have a highest adoption rate, highest close rate. Consumers get it.
But the Arizona Public Utilities backed down on there. They wanted to put a big fee on homes that had solars, and they put a much lower fee on, and they net metering they kept, right, basically. But are you going to have to battle state by state? Is there a war?
State by state, we're going to have to do that. And I think it's unfortunate, because I think ideally the scenario we're going to look at is changing the way how policy works, or how the state commissioners, the PC, works with the utility. Because right now, the programs in place is designed for us to headbutt. There is no solution. It's like there's this pie, and every dollar we take is a dollar they don't make.
Right.
It's very simple math. So if you change it to where they can actually make money off another person's infrastructure, create a competitive infrastructure landscape, that infrastructure cost comes down, the utility will make money, and the consumer will pay less for energy. That's the landscape we're looking at. Now, you're starting to see movements like this. New York is taking leadership in this role. New York's becoming it's going to my opinion, become one of the best poster children.
Well, we had Richard Kaufman on here earlier talking about what he's doing.
Exactly. So they're doing tremendous things in trying to move ahead and essentially create the true smart grid. Right now, the grid is only one-way communication, only pushes out energy. The grid of the future is where every home is a power source and a power needer. So it shares, it communicates with the grid. You still have centralized generation, but you will have capacity and energy from the home. And you'll have that thousands across. We just recently awarded an RP on the East Coast for thousands of homes. It's a smart home where you have a smart thermostat, storage, solar, all combined and providing capacity services. So that's where we see it going. Yep. California is going to move that way too. Hawaii is going to move that way too. Yep. So we're starting to see states take leadership and understand that we have to transform our energy infrastructure.
Right.
How do we do it in the most least cost-effective way, and make it a three-part win? Now, it's not as good as the old business model for the utility, but it's not a death spiral or anything like that.
Right, right. How is the storage thing going? You offer consumers now storage for their homes with their solar systems. Is that gaining traction? It's pretty expensive as an add-on right now, right?
Yes. So it's still very new. The product hasn't.
You're using Tesla batteries.
We're using Tesla battery pack, the Powerwall. It's a great product.
You get a deal from your cousin?
The deal that everybody gets. Go to the website and get the deal. But there's a story there where I can tell you when I first wanted to buy a Tesla, and I said, hey, can I get a special deal? He goes, absolutely, go to the website, get one. It's called the family deal. Everybody gets it. So yeah, I got the family deal on the battery pack. But no, it's an amazing battery pack. But the primary product that we sell today is backup, which is like having a massive performing car, but you're only driving 10 miles an hour.
Right.
So the backup is only 5% of the functionality of the battery. The 95% is all grid-related services. So our strategy is then to deploy the backup and then have thousands of homes with backup, which you can then enable grid-related services for the utility.
Right.
And then you can have instant capacity, instant reactive power, instant voltage control. So you can have all this available. You just got to allow the policy to accept it. And so then you create a revenue source for the homeowner. And then in our situation, we'll have two customers. We'll have the homeowner as a customer. We'll have the utility as a customer as well. We would be selling capacity services or grid-related services to the utility.
Right. We have time for just one or two questions here. This time's gone by really quickly. Anyone have a question for Lyndon here? Do I see a hand in the back? Right here. Kate. The question is soft costs. So that's what, two-thirds of the cost of a solar job now, basically? And the highest single cost is customer acquisition. If you're going to if the ITC goes away, you're going to have to cut your costs pretty dramatically. That's where you're focusing?
Yeah, so acquisition cost is definitely, but I think you may be referencing more on the permitting cost, or? Yes, so the acquisition part, we've quite frankly, we've struggled with this one. It's stayed around 50 to 60 cents for a while now. We're working at getting it down, but the biggest challenge that we have is really getting consumers educated on the value proposition. So it's mind-blowing to me whenever I communicate to my own friends who are thinking of getting solar. They ask me, what's the payback? I've been at this business for almost 10 years. You're asking me what's the payback? There's no payback. You don't make any investment. You just pay less for the clean energy. And so when my own friends don't know that, it takes a while to get the message out. And when we have our sales rep in a Home Depot and you catch somebody there and you explain the value proposition, the adoption rate's high. And often the follow-up is, why isn't everybody doing this? But there's the stigma that solar has a payback, that there's a capital investment, which if you were to buy it, it does. But in most cases, 70% of the market today, you just pay for the energy, you pay less for the energy than you get from the utility. But in terms of like permitting soft costs, we're working with state legislation to make things change. We've just passed a bill in California to streamline the permitting process for any systems under 10 kilowatts. And we'll have to do this state by state or building department to streamline the permitting process. Back to incentives. In California, there's 4 things you don't need a permit for. Fence, tool shed, an awning, and an oil derrick. So that's not an incentive, though.
So last point here, Lyndon. How many roofs have you installed solar on as of today? And by the end of the decade, how many roofs will you have?
So we, what's the exact number? I'm trying to think. What's our number now versus the number I communicated 2.5 months ago?
2.5 months ago, close enough.
Exactly, I'm trying to remember that number now. So call it 250,000 or so. But by 2018, or by the end of 2018, the goal is to have 1 million customers.
1 million from 250, 4 times.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fast growth. Hope you make that.
Oh, actually, my growth would have to decrease dramatically to do that.
So it's a pretty sure bet.
Or at least we feel confident about it.
All right.
So we'll get there.
Great. Let's hear it for Lyndon Rive. Thank you, Lyndon. It's fantastic.